Hi, this is Travis Ross with New Blooms Nursery. Today I'm going to show you the proper way to plant a tree. I have a few items here that are necessary for planting a tree. So the first is actually the tree. I have it soaking in a 5-gallon bucket, just getting the roots ready for planting. You can soak it up to 4 hours in advance. I have a garden cart or a wheelbarrow just to put the excess dirt in that I dig up. I have a good shovel for digging a hole. This is going to help me with digging that hole. I have some mulch. This is just hardwood mulch. And I have a hose so that I can water the tree when I'm done. So the first thing I'm going to do is just tell you about the tree. This is a Nakoma crepe myrtle, and I'm going to go ahead and read the tag. It's 10 to 12 feet. It's a fast grower. It requires full sun and it requires well-drained soil. Now what that means is I know this is an area with full sun because it's going to get sun between 10 a.m. and dusk. So it gets 8+ hours of sun, and that's what that crepe myrtle is going to want. It's also a site with well-drained soil because we're up here on top of a hill. Now we do have some clay soil, which tends to hold water a little bit more than looser soil or soil high in organic matter. But that's okay because we're up here on top of a hill, and I'm going to try to just amend my soil a little bit, and I'm going to use plenty of mulch that's going to improve that soil over time. So the first thing I need to do to get started on planting this tree is dig a hole. The hole is recommended to be 2 to 3 times the size of the pot for your tree. So the root system in this tree was in this pot, and when I pull the tree out, I'm going to shake off the excess soil, and then you're going to see that the root system is basically bare roots. So that means that there's not extra soil attached to those roots, and shake that out as much as possible, get those roots loose so that I can spread them around real well when I plant the tree. So 2 to 3 times the size of this pot would be 2 times, and that's the minimum that you want to go. Even better is going to be 3 times, which is going to be about this size. Now, if you think about that, that's a pretty big hole, but that's good because it allows the plant to spread its roots initially, kind of decompact some of that soil, especially if you have like a hard clay soil like I do. So I'm going to go ahead and get started on digging this hole. One last thing I do want to tell you is that we're going to use the dirt that we dig out of the hole to put back into the hole, and I'll talk about this a little bit more. But we don't want to amend it too much because otherwise you get what is, it's essentially like a swimming pool. If you put good dirt in there, it's going to fill with water, and the clay in our soil is going to go ahead and trap that water in there like a swimming pool and just drown the roots of that tree. So here we go. Okay, so now I've got my hole dug. The next thing I'm going to do is plant the tree. I mounded up a little bit of dirt in here just to prep for the tree so that when I put it in, it's at the appropriate level. And I'm using my shovel just as a level. If your shovel doesn't sit right, you can always use a yardstick or something else flat in order to make sure that your tree is at the right level. And remember, we want to make sure that the root crown of the tree is at the level of the dirt. So if you bury it too deeply, that's going to have, it's probably going to kill the tree. And if you bury it too shallowly, that's not going to be good for it either. So in order to get it to the right height, I'm just going to stick it in here. And I'm going to make sure my shovel's right at the root crown. I've got all my roots. I'm starting to spread them out. I want to spread them out evenly. Now that I've got them all spread out, I've got my plant at the root crown, I'm just going to start putting back in some dirt. So I'm going to take this dirt and just crumble it up, the dirt that I've already used, and once I have enough in here, I'll be able to kind of have it stand on its own. And just spread this out. There we go. And I'm just going to go ahead and keep on filling this hole with dirt until I have it full, and I know that that tree is going to be right at the root crown when I get to the top. Once I've done that, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put mulch on it. So let me go ahead and do that. Okay, so there we go. I went ahead and planted that tree, put the dirt back in there. You can see that I left the grass out. It's always good to do that. I wouldn't put the grass back on. The grass is just going to compete with your tree for any nutrients or water. Now I'm just gently tamping down the soil to get out some of the big air pockets. You know, compaction is kind of the enemy of growth and root growth. So it's good not to have your soil overly compacted, but also it is good to get those air pockets out, get it nice and tight so that you don't get erosion on top of it. Just walking on it ought to do the trick. So now that it is planted, I'm going to go ahead and cover it with mulch. And I'm going to use quite a bit of mulch just to fill up the area around this all the way out to the edges. And I'll just try to smother that grass, keep it out. And then lastly, what I'm going to do is just water the tree. So I'm going to go ahead and do that. Okay, so one last thing you need to do. First is I would put down about 3 to 4 inches of mulch around the tree, and you can go a little bit wider than your circle where you cleared the grass, just to keep that grass away from it. And that's really going to help it through its first summer or its first winter, because the mulch does a job of insulating against any cold or retaining moisture in the event of a drought. And then the other thing you need to do, which is very important, is pull the mulch away from the base of the tree a little bit. So if I've got 3 to 4 inches of mulch right down here, I'm going to pull it away from the base, and it's going to make kind of a little inverted mountain here, just so that the mulch isn't really touching the base of my tree, but it's still mounted up really good around it. And that's going to prevent any rot that might happen if that mulch were up against the base. So now I'm just going to water the tree. It's always important to water it. And for your first week with this tree, I would recommend, if you don't get a good rain that day, watering it every day, even for the first 2 weeks with that tree. After a while, after about 2 weeks, you'll have a pretty decently established root system, and you can kind of gear your watering back to every other day or every 3 days. But you still need to supplement for rain if you're not getting it, especially if you plant this tree in the spring and you have summer coming. It can take months for those roots to fully establish, and you want to make sure that you're providing supplemental to that water to that tree for at least its first year.